came, and then James came right before I did, like a couple years before I did. He started the first real HCI course in the computer science department, undergraduate and graduate. And then I came to the iSchool, and there really weren't iSchools in that form before. And I'm like, we need a strong HCI program. And also I learned about InfoBiz at Park. And so I said, let's teach a course on information visualization, but it's we'll make it a little more practical, and we'll call it information visualization and presentation. And you can see that I first taught it in 1998, and I think this was the second course ever taught in the country. Oh, not really in the country, because I think the first one was up in Calgary, so maybe the first in the country, but one of the very early courses in InfoBiz. And you can see my lovely graphic at the time and the lovely design of the website. And I just want to show, I would like reverse the order of the weeks so the students could just go to the top of the page to keep track of where we were. That's what I used to do back then. And I can see some of the great guest speakers I had, like Ronnie Kohavi and Robert Ryman, if you guys know him, Tamara Munzer, when she was still a PhD student at Stanford, Wei Chang to do animation, she was doing that. She was at Park. And then I also had, we used to read Space Scale Diagrams paper by George Furnas, and here I had Alison Woodruff, because she was still working on database visualization here at Berkeley. And Maureen Stone from Park gave her great color lecture. So she's still doing guest lectures for me remotely, which is nice. And many years later, fast forward, who TA'd this but Jeff Hare. So I think that was his first teaching experience of InfoBiz. So you learned it here first, although he did research with James and
Manish.
And Manish, yes, thank you. So I also borrowed materials, primarily pretty much verbatim, from James on how to teach HCI course the next year, 99, and taught it at the graduate level. But I also made up several other courses. I made up our core course in information retrieval. I made up an applied NLP course. I made up several seminars. So I was busy making a lot of different courses in different topics at that time. So, all right, so on to research. So I decided right when I got there, I needed to have some project right away, and I made a search engine with students. This was called Cha-Cha, before the other Cha-Cha, which actually bought out the name from us, even though we said they didn't have to. And this was actually running for many years on the UC Berkeley homepage as an alternative search engine to the bad one that Google was doing. And you can see what we try to do is put the search results in context, sort of digging into the page. So if you searched on earthquake, you'd see the context in which earthquake appeared. Like within the environmental engineering department, you could see the contextualized pages. And sometime later, Google did a simpler version of this idea. I think theirs was better, ours was too complex, but it's the basic idea. And who worked on this? Well, there was a student called Michael Chen, but I couldn't find his photo because his website's down, but who helped him out, but Jason Hong and Jimmy Lin, who are James Slenday students, so they were on the paper. They did it as part of a class project to help out Mike, who then went on to do his PhD with Eric Brewer. And then we had a project on improving website design, which was basically, well, that was the paper, but it was basically using quantitative measures to automatically assess web pages. I think Scott mentioned this. Oh, you did mention it, okay. And so this is very early work, really the first work on trying to automatically assess the properties of web pages analytically. And that was my PhD student, Melody Ivory, who went on to become a professor at Washington, although she's since pursued other matters, but she had tenure. And we had a series of papers on this work of empirically validated web page design metrics. And another person working on this project was Rashmi Sinha as a postdoc. She was a psychology PhD who decided she was interested in HCI. She got interested in HCI, did a postdoc with me, and then she went on to start some company called, what was it called? Oh yeah, SlideShare, and became the 100 millionaire when she sold it to LinkedIn. So she's a very successful entrepreneur. Another project, or I also was working in information visualization this whole time. And so there was this technology called LiDAR, which I never heard of, but it was brought to me by a student named Cecilia Aragon, who was looking at helicopters. She was a plane pilot, and she was interested in how LiDAR could be used to guide pilots to keep them from crashing. And she's now a professor at the University of Washington. And so then we had this really interesting project about phishing that got a lot of attention. And so we're looking at usable security. And this work was done by Rachna Naviha. She was primarily Doug Tigar's student, but we worked together on a couple of projects. And this work was highly impactful, and also looked at images for passwords and so on. So Rachna was a high school PhD student. And then there was this very creative student who did all sorts of very amazing, impactful user interface and InfoVis work, including this radial diagrams for visualization, animation, networks, and something called peephole displays where you move around the mobile phone and you can navigate a map in space, which was not at all appreciated by the group at that time, but is now actually a very influential design. And this kind of conversation visualization, which I didn't think works, and still don't think works, but it was kind of invented. And then he ended up doing his dissertation on usable security for voting, and that was BiD. And he went to google.org and then Google after that. And then there was James. We got these giant desks, these big giant desks, which we thought would be cool, and they looked like that. And then it turned out they weren't that usable, but they were like $60,000 each, and they were kind of donated, but we were like, we have to get some research out of these desks. And it fell to me to do it, because I don't think he actually ever did. So Amy Elliott and I ended up doing this study. She did the work, but we did the study comparing this desk to these other form factors. But that's what a tablet was like back then, in 2002. And we used kind of a PowerPoint image arranging. She was very interested in images. She was an architecture PhD, and had a paper on comparing the affordances of these different things. And she also helped on the next project, which we'll talk about, which is the big one, which was faceted navigation. So this is the Flamenco project, which was a really, really impactful project at this time, which did over a decade, really. But so the motivation was I was teaching this core course I mentioned, information organization and retrieval, and we had this part I was teaching about search, and I wanted to teach about site search, how do you search over a site, and the only reference I had was one called Why On-Site Searching Stinks. So when you're trying to teach people how to do something and the only site is why it doesn't work, and it's worse than nothing, you're in a bad position. So I wanted to figure out how to fix that problem and make site search that worked. And I wanted it to work on, this is the slide I used to show, image collections, e-government sites, shopping sites, and digital libraries. And I'm pleased to say that actually the result is used on all of these things. And so I'd like to show this picture of the Yahoo directory circa 2001, which was, I wanted to say you want to find UC Berkeley. If you start at the top, you have this choice of education or regional. So I would think the logical thing is to go to college and university. But if you click on that, then you get this. And then, okay, what do? Well, click on colleges and universities. Okay, then what? Well, now I guess you're stuck here. So you click on United States. Now you get this alphabetic list, or that turns out the right thing to do is not go there, choose between public and private. So you have to know that it's a public school, tough if you don't, and then you have to pick campuses, and then you have this link to Berkeley and so on. So this is the path you actually are supposed to have taken to find Berkeley at the Yahoo directory, was to go to US states, California cities, Berkeley, education, college, university, public, University of California, Berkeley. That was the state of the art of navigation of the web at this time. I thought it was broken. And even commercial sites like REI, like if you went to camping and hiking, you clicked on that, maybe you'd get these categories, and like you went to backpacks, you'd get this completely different set of categories. But if you went to a different part of it, it looked completely different at camping and hiking, the categories were different, and it's just a complete mess. So our solution was the Flamenco system, which we did with complete user-centered design, and it ended up being used for all of these applications. It's used for image collections, e-government sites, shopping sites, digital libraries. It's become the standard until now. It's being taken over by the iOS. Now you can't find anything anymore. But for many, many years, Amazon on down, everyone adopted this approach. So Flamenco alumni include Amy Elliott, BiD, a couple of high school students, Jennifer English, Lundberg, and Kirsten Swearingen-Redhurst, and Rashmi worked on it, and an undergrad named Kevin Lee, who went on to get his PhD at UCLA and is now a CEO of a startup and an adjunct at Columbia University. Related to this was the work on tag clouds, which Daniela Rossner worked on. A lot of you know her, she's now a professor. She worked with Kumiko Ryokai as her advisor. And we also had a project called Biotext, which also at this time, and I'm not actually mentioning all of my projects, so some of them didn't have any HCI. This was mainly about NLP and bioscience, but we did develop a user interface for searching bioscience literature. And at that time, people weren't that interested in citation and stuff. It's very hot now. It wasn't hot at all then. One of the things we advocated was showing the images, pulling them out, making them available in search results, also showing different sections of the document and highlighting, you're doing smart highlighting of the keywords that you're searching over and letting this be expanded and retracted, and also having alternative ways to do different things with the figures, and a lot of things with the words around the citations and pulling those out for mining information. There's a bunch of stuff that's now hot again that wasn't hot then. So we had a bunch of people in this project. Anna Tivoli, who is a postdoc, she's now at Pinger. Barbara Rosario, she was mainly an NLP person who is now an entrepreneur. And Amelia Stoica, who went to Ask and other places. And Preslav Nakov, who is an NLP person, who's a researcher. Ariel Schwartz, who actually went to bioinformatics, and Harinder Kuturu, who got his PhD in bioscience at Stanford. So these people all went different directions. It wasn't primarily HCI, but partly HCI. But the really important thing was that Anna ended up promoting HCI in bioscience and really educated a lot of people about why you should have HCI in bioscience. So finally, I wrote this book, Search User Interfaces, which appeared online in 2008 to cap off that decade, which was a big emphasis of research. So those are my highlights of HCI and Cal. So thanks for your attention.
Awesome. Questions? All right. Thanks, Marty. So yeah, we'll move straight to TAP. And while he's setting up, so Tap is one of the faculty in the iSchool, and he's been a pioneer in ICTD and user interfaces for underserved communities. And I think sometimes, yeah, that's the